How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Data here with some instant reaction and analysis for one of the bigger trades we've been waiting for in terms of defensemen in the NHL. As a big trade going down in the NHL today, the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Jake McCabe from the Chicago Blackhawks, but it ends up being an interesting deal as they add some more pieces and get good retention without having to give up too much. So in this video, I like to keep it short and sweet. Excuse me, sorry, I'm just trying to pull up some details at the moment. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. As the Leafs receive Jake McCabe at 50% retained, Sam Lafferty, a 2024 fifth and a 2025 fifth, in exchange for Joey Anderson, Pavel Gogolev, a 2025 first-round pick, conditional, as well as top 10 protected, and a 2026 second-round pick. Sorry about that. Stumbling over my words a little bit here as I'm just pulling up all the information for you. The biggest trade on deadline day is going to be a bottom six forward if all the elite guys are traded at this point. So in this video, I know not a lot of you will be here live as the trade already went down a few hours ago, but I just want to add my thoughts on it. I always want to throw in my reaction and analysis on the deal. I think it's a great trade for Toronto, and I think the Hawks got what they could, but we'll break that down all a little bit more right here. So let's get into it right away. Thank you to those of you who are able to join in live, but if you're watching after the fact, hope that you'll be able to get some information from this trade. So the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Jake McCabe from the Chicago Blackhawks, a defenseman who is not just interesting in terms of his play, but also very interesting in terms of his salary cap. To be at 50% retained, $2 million over the next couple seasons, that has huge value in and of itself. So Jake McCabe, acquired by the Toronto Maple Leafs, is a defense-first top four blue liner who's held his own in some pretty unenviable circumstances. 85th percentile projected wins above replacement over the last 3 years through weighted average data. As you can see, last year down closer to the 50th percentile, but then back to this year well above the 75th percentile, doing very, very well. Bryson, welcome to the chat. Welcome, Dexter. Welcome, everybody in here. Even strength offense is not too shabby. Take it with a grain of salt, but even strength defense, solid in that 77th percentile. He draws penalties quite well. He plays with against decent levels of competition without the highest levels of teammates. Usually, if you're playing at levels of competition, we're talking like I don't know, 70, 80, 90%. You would hope that you're playing with the better players on your team. 81st percentile is not bad, but he doesn't exactly have the best players around him as well. But he, at a $4 million cap hit, 50% retained to the Maple Leafs, will now only cost Toronto $2 million this season, next season, and the year after that. Kind of looking at Tampa Bay's model, where it's whatever, use all the picks, do what you got to do to get players on term and at cheap AAVs. Sam Lafferty also comes over in the deal. He was acquired by the Maple Leafs, and he is a speedy bottom six forward who kills penalties. Finishing has appeared out of nowhere this season, particularly shorthanded. I remember he had like 2 shorthanded goals in a couple minutes one game. So penalty killing is in the 85th percentile. This season, his wins above average percentile rank puts him close to the 75th. 30th weighted over the last 3 years. Offense at 41st and defense at 60th. Aside from that, pretty average all around, but this season has definitely been an outlier. And again, a guy with term, $1.2 million this season and $1.2 million next season. That has very much value. Scrolling up just to look at a bit on Jake McCabe. McCabe, according to JFresh here, at $2 million for 2 years after this one is great. Having 8 NHL defensemen, 9 if you include Jordy Ben, is a little strange for the Maple Leafs. But McCabe can theoretically play the right side, so maybe they see him as the whole replacement after this summer. And then the defensive core in Toronto moving forward could be Riley with Brody, Sandin with McCabe, and Giordano with Liljegren, with Timmins as the 7th D. So I would be curious to see how they run the defense next season. But I think, he's a physical guy, Jake McCabe is. We'll check out the hits here, here in this tab right here. Great move for the Leafs. Yeah, good move for the Leafs, says Golden Gamer. They definitely needed a good defenseman, and McCabe is a pretty good one. Dexter saying for the other gents in the chat, you guys start right at the start of this. Oh, yeah, you can go live, or you can go back to exactly where I was, Dexter. Who do you think wins this trade, maybe? I think the Leafs win it because they get not only a good piece for this season, but they get exactly what they need. They need players with term and cheap AAVs. So Jake McCabe over an 82-game season is good for how many hits and blocks? He's good for 138 hits, 136 blocks, so well over a block and a hit per game. This season, 20 points in 55 games, well above his usual pace. He's had a little bit of a touch of offense with all the ice time he's getting with the Blackhawks right now, playing 19 and a half minutes of ice time per night so far, 115 blocks, 122 hits. Now, take this with a grain of salt, though, as well, in terms of the hits, according to Jay Fresh, as he usually sticks with the away hits to try to filter out overzealous scorekeepers at home. The past 3 seasons, McCabe has one of the biggest gaps between his recorded hits at home, where he's in the 90th percentile, and on the road, where he's in the 70th percentile. So just to say, yes, he's physical, but Leafs fans shouldn't expect him to be lighting guys up all the time. Very interesting note to have right there. So there's the Jake McCabe pickup for the Maple Leafs. I think he does a lot of the things that they need. I think he's a great addition for all the reasons that I've already said, especially that he is going to be a piece that they can keep for multiple years, not just a rental, as they've been paying a lot for rentals as of late. They're kind of going that Tampa Bay Lightning route. But here's the thing. If I'm Toronto and I have, over the next 3 years, I have 2/3 and a first. In my top 3 picks over the next, even my top 4 picks, over the next 3 years, I have 1/3, 1 first, 2/3, and a fourth. 1/3, 2/3. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. 1 first, 2/3, and 1/4 over the next 3 years. That's something that a team like Tampa Bay does. Now, Tampa Bay, they give up crazy picks. Their window is now. If you look at it in a certain way, it does make sense for them, even if I think it was an overpayment for Tanner Jeannot. It makes sense in that way. They've won Stanley Cups, and they want to win more Stanley Cups. But for the Toronto Maple Leafs, to have only 1 first, 2/3, and 1/4 in your top 4 picks over the next 3 years, and you don't even have a first-round victory to show for it, it would be crazy if the Leafs were to lose again this year in the first round, which is very possible against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then maybe even they say we're done with Kyle Dubas, and whoever comes in to replace him has 1/3 in this year's draft, a first and a fourth in the next year's draft, and just a third in the 2025 draft. It'll be a tough team to kind of reevaluate. Kerfoot's likely moving out. Engvall, I don't think he stays. Ryan O'Reilly won't be staying. You have to, have 1 more season of Matthews after this, 2 more seasons of Tavares after this, 2 more seasons of Marner after this, and 1 more season of Nylander after this. This core, their window to win is now before they're going to cost a lot more, and you just gave a lot of picks to try and make that happen within the next 1 or 2 years. So if it doesn't, it is honestly a disaster. So Jake McCabe at $2 million for 2 more years after this one is a huge plus for the Leafs blue line moving forward. Sam Lafferty making 1.15 next season as well. Huge plus. So I love this deal in terms of what they get. I think the value that they give up isn't extraordinary. I don't think it's crazy. I think that it is the going rate. I don't think it's a ridiculous price, but the Blackhawks are very happy. They have 2 firsts for the next 3 years. 3 seconds this year, 2 seconds next year, and their second the year after that. 2/3 this year, 2/3 next year, and a third after that. So in the next 3 years, they have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 top 3-round picks. 17, 16, well, what am I saying? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 picks within the first 3 rounds over the next 3 years. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's great for the Blackhawks. It's interesting because the Hawks are in a rebuilding phase where they're going to move Patrick Kane. They're going to move maybe Jonathan Toews in the future. They're going to be moving pieces and recouping and rebuilding. But can they hope to get players that were as good as Kirby Dach and Alex DeBrincat? I don't know if those picks will become players as good as them. So it's odd. I don't think they had to rebuild. They didn't have to sell off last offseason. They chose to, and now they're in full rebuild mode as Lafferty and McCabe and Kane will all be leaving. Full on rebuild mode. But it's an interesting approach. I don't think they had to go this road, but now they've committed to it. Now they're in on it. Joe, yeah, good trade for us. I don't mind giving up everything we gave either. I wouldn't either. Let's get into the players that the Leafs gave up as well for this trade to happen. happen. They trade away Joey Anderson. Anderson, former third-round pick, yes, of the Devils in 2016. He came to Toronto. What was the trade again that brought him to Toronto? It's crazy how many ads pop up here. It was for the Andreas Janssen trade. Yes. So they get Andreas Janssen moved out for Joey Anderson back in October of 2020. With the Maple Leafs, he has 20 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points in 20 games. Yeah, nothing to write home about. With the Marlies, he's been pretty good with the Marlies. I'll give him that. He's still a 24-year-old winger who's a former third-round pick. There is some talent in there. I'm sure that the Hawks will use him in a middle 6 or bottom 6 role, even though that'll be above where he likely should be. But the Hawks will find use for him. The Leafs also trade Pavel Gogolev, an undrafted prospect who was signed by them. I forget when he was signed, at least back in 2020, I would assume, since that's when he started playing with the Marlies. He had great stats in the OHL with the Guelph Storm, 96 points in 63 games back in 2019-20. Now he's 23 years of age. He's had some time with the Marlies, but he's been spending more of his time with the Newfoundland Growlers in the ECHL. 48 points in 33 games, 21 goals, 27 assists this season. I don't see him as a big piece in the Hawks rebuild. So essentially, I would call it, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I would almost call it just 2 contracts to the Blackhawks to even things out. Really, the big pieces there are the conditional first and the conditional second that they get back. So that's what they trade in exchange for McCabe. That's what the Hawks get back. Actually, let's go back over to Twitter. I think we overpaid. However, if we win the Stanley Cup, it doesn't matter, says the Leafs fan. But I don't think this is the year. Not to diss the Leafs or anything, not trying to diss them or memes or anything, first round LOL, stuff like that. But the East is just so strong. In such a year, is this the year that the Leafs finally break through when the Eastern Conference is the strongest that it's been in recent memory? Oof, I don't think this is the year for the Leafs to let alone go on a run. But I don't think they'll even make it through. I don't think they'll make a run, let alone make it through the first round. So over on CapFriendly, I want to see what they have to say. Sorry, I was already here. So on CapFriendly, there were some interesting thoughts that I wanted to pull up from them before we go ahead and call it. So the Maple Leafs, in that trade that they receive all that salary cap from the Blackhawks now, with McCabe and Lafferty both having term, that changes things for them next season. They are $20 million below the floor. They have a projected cap hit of $42 million for 14 contracts. $20 million below the floor. So Chicago's gonna have to convince players like the Max Domis and the Andreas Athanasius of the world to sign those short contracts for a lot of money. Like when Derek Stepan went to the Coyotes for like $6 million, they're gonna have to get players in here for large contract values. Over the next 3 drafts, the Blackhawks have 6 firsts, 17 picks in the first 3 rounds, and 26 total over the next 3 drafts. The Maple Leafs, however, only have 1 first, no seconds, 2 thirds, 1 fourth, 5 fifths, 3 sixths, and 3 sevenths over the next 3 drafts. The Leafs now have $2.77 million in usable LTI salary space remaining with a full 23-man roster. Sam Lafferty, not a rental either. The Blackhawks have 2 remaining retained salary slots through 2024-25. So they'll retain on Patrick Kane. They retained on Jake McCabe. They can retain on 1 more. And I think that's about it. It's that first round pick. It's conditional. It's top 10 protected. And those fifths are also conditional. I want to get those conditions, and then I'll wrap up my thoughts on it. So I think it's a good trade for the Leafs because they get exactly what they need without giving up any of their blue chip names. They don't give up any major roster players, anything like that. They don't give up any of their guys. Their guys. I never assumed that Knees or I can't even think of any other Leafs major prospects aside from that. You wouldn't think that they would be involved in it, and they weren't. But they didn't have to give up anyone really significant. Give me a second to just pull this up. So let me know your thoughts down here in the comments as well. I see Tic Tac. It said something interesting over in the Discord server. Shout out to Tic Tac in the Discord server. I liked what he had to say about this trade. Just pulling this up. Down in the comments here, 3N5Z thinking that Tampa overpaid for Jeannot. Yeah, I would think, again, if Tampa goes and wins the Stanley Cup, even if they do, I think it's okay to say when the price was too much. I'm not saying that they got fleeced in value in terms of they get nothing for something. They get exactly what they wanted, but they paid more than the market value to get him, if that makes sense. Juice saying here, if the Leafs lose in the first round again this year, do you think Matthews is starting to consider signing with another team after his contract is done? Absolutely. I think that's a very real possibility. Owen saying, good trade for Toronto. Imagine if they could re-sign O'Reilly's scary team. Yeah. So they get what they needed. They're going the Tampa Bay Lightning approach, where they're trying to get players who they can extend, or not extend, but have for multiple seasons on a lower AAV. They have term and they are reliable pieces, and they are able to they're not just rentals, and they don't cost the whole farm either. A couple contracts, a conditional first, conditional second. That's about it. Leafs fan thinks that it's a W for both teams. Both were trying to I think it's a W for both teams. We are trying to contend and win the Stanley Cup, and Chicago is rebuilding and trying to tank for Bedard and stocking up draft picks for their future. The retooling, the rebuilding, all that is definitely underway with all those picks. But you got to think, will any of those picks become what they had in the first place? Yeah, they have Frank Nazar and Kevin Korchinski in the system now, which is great. But will any of those picks end up being better than what they had in the first place with DeBrincat and Doc? I don't know. I just want to get what those conditions are on the trade, and then we'll be able to call it right there. I think the condition was just... could it be that it was just top 10 protected? No, maybe Dave Pagnotta has it. Lucas Reichel, yeah, it's true. Quite a few live streams over the last few days with all these trades going down. Actually, let me get some quotes on Kyle Dubas. That would be a fair thing to pull up as well. Kyle Dubas saying on his move so far, adding more physicality overall. There's no reason for us to beat around it. We've wanted to become more competitive. Lafferty makes us faster up front, and we didn't want to deplete from our prospects in the system. He says that he had interest in McCabe when he was a free agent a couple of years ago. He likes that he has 2 more years left on his deal, and we're excited to have him come in and look forward to working with him. Yeah, absolutely. Don't see the conditions just yet. Yeah, well, actually, with Ryan Lindgren with Braden Schneider being sent down, the Rangers can actually make the Patrick Kane move as of now, and they'd have $30,000 to spare. So Kane to the Rangers could happen as soon as now. It doesn't have to be Wednesday anymore. Now with, I think, K'Andre Miller getting suspended or whatever is going to be happening, and then there was injuries and stuff going on. Frank Saravalli also tweeting, connecting the dots on the Leafs trade. Now with their salary cap situation, they must either not be planning to activate Matt Murray until the playoffs, or they'll be moving on from one of Kerfoot, Engvall, or Justin Hall before the deadline. Seems to be some smoke recently with Kerfoot and the Canucks. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Alex Kerfoot is moving to the Vancouver Canucks by the time the deadline rolls around. McCabe, I still can't find the condition on these trades. I've been looking for it for a while. I didn't want to delay the live stream too much. Maybe another one tomorrow with Kane. Yeah, with this trade, Toronto is over the salary cap now, but they have to move someone out. Who do you think they move out? There you go. I think it's Alex Kerfoot. That's what I would think. It's just top 10. Is that the only condition? I was just wondering what the other conditions are with the 5th round picks being conditionals as well. So the first rounder's top 10 protected, but what were the conditions on the other picks here? So now we're at the same point we were at with Timo Meier with Kane. We know it's coming, but we're just waiting for it to be announced. I'm not quite at that point, but it was interesting. Like I said this on Saturday, I think, that we knew that it was more likely that Kane was going to the Rangers than Meier to the Devils. However, it was likely closer in time that the Devils were going to get Meier than the Rangers were going to get Kane, even though it was more likely at that time. It just so many hoops to go through for the Rangers. So I guess I wouldn't sweat it too much. I'm not seeing anything about the conditions on these picks. The first rounder is top 10 protected, but for those conditional 5ths that the Maple Leafs also get back, I'm not seeing anything going on here. K'Andre Miller put out a statement. I didn't see that. I want to take a moment to address what occurred in last night's game. It was completely accidental. I would never intend to do that. I feel awful about it. All right, so that's for K'Andre Miller, what he said. But can it be that no insiders are saying anything about the conditions on these picks? All they say is conditional 5th. Sorry to drag this on just to end off the last thing. I just want to make sure it's as informative as possible. But can it be that no one said anything about these conditions? I don't know if it's in the next 24 hours. I'd say it's at the latest. It could still be on deadline day even, but we know it's definitely happening. Earliest is now, as of this afternoon. Latest is trade deadline day, with a likely spot also being in on Wednesday. I'm just scrolling through all the tweets from 2-3 hours ago from all the insiders. Finally, the condition on this pick. Thank you for bearing with me. So cap-friendly condition for the 2024 fifth-round pick that Toronto received from Chicago is that the fifth-round pick transferred to Toronto will be the lowest of the 2024 fifth-round picks that Chicago owns at the time of the draft. So they may own more than, thank you, Tic Tac, throwing that in there. Fifth-round pick will be Toronto's lowest. Okay, so there's a condition. But was I not on CapFriendly's page earlier? Did I not see this earlier? Sorry to have dragged this out for an additional 5 minutes, 5 more minutes than it had to be. But then I don't see it over here. But then I saw it in my tweets on the side. Okay, well, there we go. There's a condition on that. So the fifth, they will still be fifth-round picks. It's not like those fifths will become fourths or thirds or anything else. The fifth-round picks, they'll be lower. The Leafs will receive lower picks from the of the whichever ones that they have. Is it they just put it up now? I guess that's it, eh? Thanks, Owen. Appreciate that. I guess that's it. The conditions took a while to come out. So sorry, I had to go searching for it a little bit, but we found it in the end. In the end, the Maple Leafs received Jake McCabe at 50% retained, Sam Lafferty, a 2024 fifth and a 2025 fifth, and that will be the lower of whatever picks Chicago has at that time in 2024-25. The Blackhawks received Joey Anderson, Pavel Gogolev, who honestly I see them as more of as just contract pieces, a 2025 top 10 protected first-round pick, and a guaranteed 2026 second-round pick. Did you put that Tic Tac? Let me see this. Is it in the hockey channel? Is it recent? I don't know if it nothing updated here. I'm not seeing it Tic Tac unless it's in. All I see is that you sent me that you pinged me. Maybe my app on my computer is going. So let me open up Discord on my phone. Then maybe it'll come out. Now I see it. I'm not sure why. Actually, no, I just see the ping for me there. Tic Tac. All I see is the ping. Well, regardless, we figured it out. Thank you for bearing with me. In the end, all the analysis I have to say is that the Leafs get exactly what they needed and what will help them not only this year, but moving forward, as they have players with term that they can trust, that are at low AAVs, and they don't have to give up anything too crazy to do it either. They only have to give up, they give up a first and a second for one of the more highly touted defensemen of this deadline and at 50% salary retained for multiple seasons. I think that's a win in terms of market value. They gave up less than they probably thought they would have, or at least I thought they would have. Now the Blackhawks have a boatload of picks, and the Leafs are going to have to make sure that if it's not this year, it's definitely next year before that window starts to close. Tampa Bay has had this approach. Their window will slowly begin to close over time, but they have 2 Stanley Cups and possibly more to come to show for it. The Leafs still have nothing to show for it, and I wouldn't think that this trade puts them over the top in terms of this year's postseason either. I still see the Lightning taking it in round 1. The Tanner Jeannot addition versus the Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty additions, I don't see that changing the balance of things too much. I think they're a little bit of a wash. Maple Leafs definitely get stronger defensively, and that was their biggest issue. But I still think that the Lightning are strong enough to just punch through that. So those are my thoughts. Make sure to leave yours down here in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to be subscribed for all breaking news and analysis in the real world of hockey, as well as trade deadline coverage on Friday, March the 3rd, 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to have you join us over in the Discord server where we break news and discuss it there as well. But I'll leave you off there, ladies and gentlemen. 2028 San Jose Sharks franchise mode coming out tomorrow on February 28th, Tuesday. Do we even have any big names to going to? Well, there's still a Jake Chychrun possibility, Patrick Kane coming in soon, but not many big names left. It'll be interesting to see what teams do as second, third, fourth options, guys like JVR, etc. So everyone have yourselves a wonderful evening. The West exists solely for salary retention. Have yourselves a wonderful evening and look forward to the Sharks franchise mode 2028 draft and offseason coming your way tomorrow afternoon. So thanks again for being here. Have a great night, and we'll talk soon. Good night.